began in Africa.
Yeah.
We are controlling transmission.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you say?
Yeah. 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 Okay.
Hello and welcome to Afrospace. This is the show that we come weekly to talk Pan-African stories, what's happening on the continent, what's happening with our diaspora, which is spread across the globe. On our program this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the very topical issue that's happening right now in Nigeria, and that is the NSAS protests. And to help me and assist me on this conversation today, I have my co-host who's on the panel today, Adetunji Omatola, who is going to be helping us tackle. Tunji is also an expert for political African affairs as an analyst. And I also have Seju Adoye, who is a counselor in London, UK, as well as Faith Abiodun, who is executive for the African Leadership Academy. All right, and then I'm going to start, I guess, with you, Faith, and just ask you, perhaps, if you could give us an overview of what the NSAS protest is about. What is currently taking place in Nigeria?
Well, it looks a little bit different today than it looked the last 2 weeks. But the key conversation here is about the dissatisfaction of all Nigerians, let's start that way, predominantly young people, with what has been seen as the excesses of a rogue unit of the police force. The Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, has been in existence for 30-odd years and had a mandate that seems to have been eroded gradually over time. Rather than anti-robbery crime prevention tactics, the SARS unit had begun to adopt, profiling of innocent citizens under the guise of police work, and they descended into violence, into extortion. There have been accusations of rape, all sorts of inhuman activities being perpetrated by the police. And at some point, it became really difficult to know, or to always be sure that these are police units, because at times they dress in plain clothes. And so if someone in plain clothes pulls you over, you're not super sure that they're a police official. And even then, the activities that they carry out do not convince you that they are doing the job of the government or security. And so this has been going on for several years, and you have people who have been documenting the experiences with the police. And it just boils to the surface at some point, and people realize I'm not the only one who's going through this. There are lots of us. And this crisis has gone on for far too long. And so I guess citizens decided that this was the time for them to put an end to what is inhuman, what is not normal, what is not Nigerian, doesn't represent the values that we stand for. And so that's really, the origin of this. It wasn't a crisis, it was a peaceful demonstration for human rights, and that's how I choose to look at it going forward. Okay.
And Faith, you're on record saying that you have personal encounters yourself with the SARS unit. Can you share some of that with us? What is your experience with them?
It's disheartening to realize that for too long you feel disempowered. And then you realize that there are actually many of us who've had similar experiences. So my experiences with the police in Nigeria have, they're far too many to recall, but I'll just point to two or so of them. Being pulled over by the police, requesting to get the keys to my car. And I insist, no, you're not going to have the keys to my car. They want to see my license, which I produce. And then in the course of producing my license, because, a little bit naively, which should not be the case, I have my license in my wallet, and my wallet contains notes. And so once they see that there's currency in your wallet, then they move away from the initial conversation, which was, can I see your license? Where are you going? What do you do here? Now they're saying you have to go with us to the station. I'm saying, why do I have to go with you to the station? And they insist you have to go with them to the station, right? And obviously that's the one thing that almost every Nigerian who is savvy wants to avoid. because, once you accompany them to the station, first, anything could happen on the way to the station. They could detour somewhere else, and they always want to get the keys to your car, which was my experience. And I insisted, I'm not going to give you the keys to my car. And again, they play on all kinds of, vulnerabilities that you might have. In my case, I had my wife in the car with me. And that, again, makes them a little bit, they believe that you don't want to be any kind of violent because you've got someone in the car with you whom you want to protect, etc. That day, this was more than 30 minutes of them trying to extort me. Eventually, I accompanied them to the police station because I believed I was in the right. I did absolutely nothing wrong. And once we got to the station, the official, basically just melted into the crowd. He was just one of a few cops. And now I'm trying to say, well, what exactly is going on here? What am I doing here? And then the boss shows up and says, you to give him what he wants now. Basically, why are you dragging this conversation? Give them the money they want. And I was extorted that day. And, eventually I drove out of the station, with my license, with my wallet, but I'd lost far too much money that day than I wanted to lose. And there was no basis for that conversation. If he was there to simply inspect my license, he could have done that. If he was going to inspect any part of my vehicle that was deficient, he could have done that. But all he wanted was to get money off me because I looked like a prey. And that was just the one. There's the other time when the police officers shot at the vehicle that I was in, because they tried to get money from the driver who insisted on not giving them money. And then he kind of sped off while they were not watching. And we all thought, oh, that's great. We can escape the police. And the next thing we knew, there were gunshots, right, at the vehicle that we were driving. And these are just, two experiences. I've had friends who've been arrested, and we've tried to bail them out of a police station, and it's absolute chaos, impossible.
Yeah.
And everyone has their own stories, to be honest.
I mean, Siju, this is total victimization of, the citizens by the police who are supposed to be protecting the citizens. Perhaps help us understand, was this police unit ever, true to their work, or were they always a rogue force? Is this a weapon that the politicians and the government has used over the years, or is it something that has gotten corrupted along the way?
Years, it's something that is common ground. I can remember as far back as 2002, 2001, for instance. So we're looking at almost, this is 19 or so years ago, that I visited Nigeria at the airport. You can already, once the plane lands and you step off, the extortion starts. So it's all government officials at whatever level, the extortion starts. Where's our daily bread? Do you understand? I refuse. One thing I do is I refuse to give them money, and I don't understand your language because I'm a foreigner. I pretend that. Did you know? I'm not of this part of the world, and I refuse to subject myself to whatever it is you've got going on here. So that's the attitude that I take. Although I understand the language, I understand the system, but I go about that. So do you see British passport? I'm British. So that's the way I kind of used to fend off all this extortion, because you come from the UK or you come from abroad. They thought, okay, today is meat. They're ready to feast on you. And it's not just officials, even ordinary citizens, they're already piling on you what money they can get from you. So it's really sad, because do you blame them? Do you blame the government officials? Or do you blame the citizens for extorting whoever they see as prey? Because they're underpaid. Citizens are underpaid. How much is the salary of an average man or an average woman in Nigeria? Or how much is the salary of the government officials? So they have to look for other means. Even if they were paid, are their salaries regular? Is another question. So they're not paid, they're underpaid, the salaries are not regular. So who are they going to now turn to? The citizens. So for them, the daily work is to attack the likes of Faith as he goes about his business and see who's out there on the road, who can we stop? And this is how we are making our daily earnings. So it has become a daily job. They go out there, they look out. I mean, police stop and search all around the world, but within citizens' right. But there is no such thing as citizens' right in Nigeria. We are here to collect our daily bread. You know what we want. If you don't listen up, or if you don't cooperate, you're going to be here as long as and it might even end up to fatality. So the sooner you respond to our demand, the better we'll let you off and let you go scot-free until another day. So it is very bizarre. It is very barbaric. I mean, some of the pictures that I've seen, they type human beings like animals, ready to be set fire on. You know, those kind of human rights violation. I mean, it's heart-wrenching to begin to replay the images here on this interview. It's really heart-wrenching. But those are the realities that a typical Nigerian will face in their daily business. And they say that young people have found another way to eat, to survive, and to support their family. And because they've done that, they now become targets that you must have money, because so many Nigerian youths are entrepreneurs. Like, for instance, what you do, you're an entrepreneur, so they must have money because they found another means. So we want that share. Never mind that they pay taxes for their business, but we want that share of the money you make, because now, the aftermath of the protest, probably we're going to come back to this at some point, is that they've gone to vandalize, they've gone to loot the entrepreneurs' businesses and vandalize their properties. Some of them have been set on fire, which is so sad. Some people who only just started their small business this year, they haven't even broke even, they have not even made the profit. Now they're left at a huge loss. So it's sad issues like that, but I let other people talk. But those are the kind of things, that young people are experiencing in Nigeria.
All right. So Tunji, this is a long-standing history of police repression and brutality on citizens and just violation of human rights. Why do you think at this point in time, people have decided to stand up against this abuse? And of course, we saw the trigger of the protest with the shooting, but why now? Because this stuff has been happening. Why do you think now is a time that people have decided enough is enough?
Look, first of all, let me give you a foundation. Nigeria is a country, as my father told me many years ago, where the best is not possible and the worst has already happened. A country of almost 200 million people, producing 2 million barrels of oil a day, and 70% of the population are living on less than $1 a day, and we're now the poverty capital of the world with over 100 million people. And in spite of this sad human development index that we see, maternal mortality, infant mortality, hospitals, mere consulting clinics, the president in the 2021 budget with his journeyman, the vice president, they're planning to spend about 4 billion naira, almost 200 million rand on food and travel. We have leaders who do not care. We have leaders who steal elections. We have leaders who use thugs to attack the citizenry in order to get their way at elections. Nigeria, in my view, is a failed state. We have Boko Haram taking swaths of territory in the northeast. We have Fulani herdsmen running amok and killing people. And all the president tells us is that the perpetrators of this heinous act will be brought to book. There is no administration of justice in Nigeria, particularly if you're poor. And even the rich sometimes do not get justice because it's always about who's more powerful. So when you juxtapose that with a country where the police are not well trained, they're not well paid, they carry out these crimes against humanity, even in cahoots with high-ranking officials, whether it's in the army or the police. It takes only one more incident to set off this kind of protest. As you saw with the George Floyd case in America, there were many killings before George Floyd, litany of killings. But it took George Floyd for people to say, the video was so graphic that people were moved to action. So that is the Nigeria we know. It is a country where we have been held down by military dictatorship, where people are brutalized. If you remember the case of Fela Kuti's mother, aged mother, who was thrown from the balcony, and 1,000 soldiers to go and prosecute one individual with a few bandsmen, people who are working for it. and they threw the woman from the window and killed her. There's also the case of Bisoye Tejusho, who was hacked to death by General Abacha's goons in the 1990s when he was prosecuting terror against his own population. There's the case of Bola Ige, a whole attorney general, a sitting attorney general of the Federation of Nigeria. They went to his house, removed his police orderly, and apparently they shot him. He didn't die, and then they proceeded to use sticks and cudgels to beat him to death. The cases are many. Nigeria, in my view, needs a reset. Nigerians all over the world have to be a little bit more proactive. There's no more, oh, I'm in London, I'm in South Africa, I'm in Berlin. It doesn't concern me. Our voices have to be more strident. Otherwise, there will be no Nigeria as we know it in the future.
All right, Faith, in terms of democracy in Nigeria, it seemed as though Nigeria is on the path of aligning themselves with proper democratic practices. Since 1999, and obviously the last election last year, seemed as though the electoral processes are becoming more democratic. Is this just a story, and is this different on the ground? Are people still struggling to express themselves and their democratic rights are not properly expressed?
At some point, you might think about democracy as a smokescreen because it gives you the illusion that things are now well because you can march to the polls and cast your vote. But even if you take these little elements of progress, they've not gone smoothly. People have always questioned whether the votes actually count. So the fact that you can actually vote, you don't know if those votes are counted. When it comes to a census, we don't have a proper census. Our last census was several years ago. And so we're guesstimating numbers. We're not super sure. So when the electoral process comes around and then you get, X number of votes from a particular state, you're actually not sure if there are that many people in that state. You're not sure if the votes actually work. So yes, we have the elements of progress. It looks like we're getting better, but the polarization in society is getting worse as well. People are not satisfied. My parents' generation are still trying to agitate to separate the country. And the people in my generation who believe that we have no business, putting together these disparate pieces of land into one country. So I'm all for some kind of progress, but when you analyze it, are we getting better? Does the average Nigerian feel as though they have the right to exist? They have the right to proper work? They have the capacity to find work? Do you really feel at peace? I haven't felt at peace in Nigeria. I haven't felt that things are great. I don't live in the country. I haven't lived there for more than 10 years. But every time I travel to Nigeria for a week, within 3, 4, 5 days, I'm so uncomfortable. Things don't work. Institutions are not great. If you don't have someone in the police, someone in the army, someone in the power generation office, someone in immigration, someone in customs, everyone needs to know someone in every type of government office to get whatever they want. You can't join the queue and get anything done. You cannot. You have to be prepared to pay here and there. That's not normal. So it looks like we're beginning to normalize the little bits. They're feeding us little bits, and we think that's okay. So no, yes, there's democracy on paper, but are our lives getting better? No, they're not. We're simply recycling our concerns, and then we're getting tired of complaining. So when people stop talking, it's not because things have been solved. It's because they're just done. And you've seen this. What Tunji mentioned is absolutely correct. Look, we've been protesting against all sorts, but no one is talking about Bola Ige any longer because we're just tired. How long do you talk about the fact that Bola Ige was killed, a minister of justice in the country? I know the family so well. We're family friends. My house is a few minutes from their house, and the family goes through this grief every single time when the anniversary of his death comes up. We lived very close to each other when he was killed, and I couldn't believe it. You're thinking, no way they were going to kill that person. And this is not a common guy on the street. A member of government, someone who ran for president a few months before and humbled himself to operate in that same government. But people get tired of complaining against the same thing. Let's not talk about the brutality that people get at the hands of the army. We're talking about police. Let's not talk about the military themselves when they're not shooting randomly. If you cross paths with a soldier on the streets of Nigeria, be prepared for the worst. That is the truth. If you cross paths, the soldiers routinely violate every type of law. They drive against one-way traffic and no one can stop them. They do everything you're not supposed to do, but they're a law unto themselves. And so let's not be carried away by the smokescreen of democratic practice. Yes, the military is not governing the country actively, but I see the return of Buhari to power as same of the same. Nigerians had no business electing a former military dictator on the guise that probably he's reformed. He has proven time and time again he is not reformed. He's taken off the military attire. He's put on, a civilian's attire, but he operates the exact same way. People were completely disgusted that he didn't come out to address citizens last week or until last week. And I was one of those. I thought, won't he say something? In hindsight, he's operated exactly the same way all the time. He's always acted like it's an inconvenience for him to speak to citizens. Like people should just understand the way this is not the president's style. That's what his age said. It's not his style to speak all the time. In a democratic system, you don't have a choice. You answer to us. It's not about your style.
Yeah.
It's not about
all
your
right.
preferences.
Okay. Faith, I'm going to move on to Siju quickly and just we've got to talk about exactly a week ago on the 20th of October, the tragic incident at Lekki Tollgate where the army opened fire against the citizens. The army has come out and have denied any involvement with that. What is the position with those shootings? Who is responsible for those shootings?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows on face value. But according to the eyewitnesses, they reported that as soon as it went dark, they were singing the national anthem in solidarity, coming together in solidarity. They didn't know when the military started marching forward. So somebody must have ordered the military to come to the toll gate. And who can do that? The citizens can't order the military. Neither can Lagos State, to be honest, because they're local government. So somebody from federal government, somebody senior, as high as possible, would have instructed for the military to come down to do whatever they were supposed to be doing. Apparently, they're supposed to come and keep peace. But their way of keeping peace is to shoot at unarmed civilians. So if you're going to keep peace, if you're there to maintain peace, why was it dark? Why were all the CCTV cameras, why were they all off? Because you want to commit atrocities. So you don't want that, you don't want the evidence to come out because you know that the international communities are watching. You know that you are about to violate human rights. So you came out dark, you switched off the CCTV cameras and you started shooting at unarmed civilians. Who does that? That's barbaric. That's evil.
Yeah.
And the president came out in his speech and couldn't even condemn that. He couldn't condemn it because he's the one who ordered it. There was no empathy in his speech. We have lost, a number of Nigerian civilians exercising their rights. The flag was being, they were flying the flag at full mast. Who does that? There's a national tragedy there. There's a national tragedy that just happened. You are here to address it. You're flying the Nigerian flag at full mast. If that was in the United Kingdom or anywhere in the world, flags are flown at half mast to honor the dead.
All right, Tunji, I mean, you spoke earlier and said that...
Let me speak to that question. Sorry, I just wanted to just chip in on what Shiju was saying so that we can have some clarity in terms of what happened on that 20th of October. And then you can frame that question, but I'll be very quick. The governor of Lagos is the chief security officer of the state. In fact, every governor in Nigeria, because each state is independent, even though they're part of a federation. And it was the governor that called a curfew for 4 p.m. and gave only a few hours notice. Now, that Lekki toll gate is owned by Lagos State. It's called the LCC, Lagos Concession Authority or something. So the fact that they removed the CCTV cameras, they switched off the lights, that the army couldn't have controlled that activity. But also, when the soldiers had shot people dead, eyewitness accounts said that one of the soldiers who was dropping bodies at a hospital called the MRS hospital said to them categorically that it was the governor that sent them to come to the toll gate. Now, also, if you remember, the governor, when asked what happened, he gave a statement and said, what happened today in Lagos is a dark day in the history of the country, and that forces beyond his control are the ones who gave those orders. It was not him. Now, if you also know, there's a gentleman who is the head of the ruling party in Nigeria. His name is Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There were people who called him. There are recordings that we have seen and heard his voice on his mobile phone, indicating that it could only have been him that would have given the order, because he's the godfather of the Lagos state governor. So my sense is, if we look at it from the chain of command, then militarily, given the president's body language, and I'm not saying he's the president, we cannot exonerate the president because he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So he should have said something.
And a former general.
Yes,
Yeah.
but also
But, so
the fact
Tunji,
that
just
the
talk-
commander-in-chief
Tunji, just
of the
talk-
armed forces is critical.
talk into the provisions of the Constitution. Is a governor, do they have the authority to command an army to open fire?
No, the governor of the state does not have the authority because there's a chain of command in the military. But having said that, there's no ways that they're going to come into such a territory. Remember the toll gate, they were behind the toll gate, and the toll gate is administered by the state governor. And that toll gate is a major cash cow for the state. And they have stopped activity at that toll gate. It's millions of rand per day. I think it's about 2-3 million that they were losing every day. And that's why I'm giving you all the other characters, like the head of the party in the country and the governor and also the presidency, to say this thing can, those three men and even the chief of army staff will know something. They must know something. And if they don't know, then who knows? That's where we're at.
All right, Faith, the president has come out and said an independent investigation is now underway, I think from yesterday. And they're looking into the matter and trying to find the culprits and the perpetrators. Is this something that we can trust, that a due diligence will be employed to bring to account the perpetrators of that massacre?
It's a joke. A
When
mysterious
I get the report from Delegiwa's murder from the 1980s, then I will believe. And when I get the report from Bola Ege's murder and Funsho Williams' murder and everyone who is being killed, we're talking individuals who were not random citizens. And I use the word random with caution, because you're looking at people who are high-profile Nigerians for whom panels of investigation have been going on for 20 years, 30 years. The president does not care, as his body language has shown, as his words have shown, as everything has shown. The basic care for human life does not exist. I have no hope whatsoever in any panel that has been constituted. I have no expectations that a report will be published. I have no expectations that citizens are going to hear the end of this. They've always employed delay tactics. I assume that this will be a delay tactic once again. They will investigate for the next 5 years. We're going to hear nothing about it, and they're going to hope that we move on. I pray that I'm proven wrong. I pray that I'm proven wrong. But I have no expectations whatsoever of this government.
Well, Sija, we've seen the protests turn quite violent, and the looting and the burning that has happened over the course of the protests is quite disturbing. Are these real protesters who are coming in and committing these acts of violence, or could there be some infiltration and some rogue element that has hijacked the protest?
With any protest anyway around the world, you will have 2-3 different kinds of protesters. You have the people who are actually the activists who are speaking up for their civil rights. You have those people that have come, to disrupt to disrupt the that are genuinely angry anyway, and they think through violence and looting goods is the way to speak up and speak out. And there are those people who actually come to hijack it for their own personal, for ulterior motive for whoever has lobbied them. So there are all kinds of people that will be in the mix. So it is expected. That is usual around the world. So what we are seeing right now, I mean, conspiracy theories are saying that, that even the opposition parties are also involved, that the opposition parties are trying to destabilize the country as well, because they have their own hidden agenda, their own ulterior motive, that if the situation is destabilized, this should provoke the youths. So they're using the youths as a vehicle to advance their own agenda as well, because they still think that they're going to run the government, that you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't got any clue. Even if you were to topple your president today, we are ready to step in. I'm talking about the opposition parties now. So everybody has an agenda. Everybody has a stake here. But the youth that actually started this, that have led this, they really, really need to come together. Come together. Again, there's this unity amongst them because everybody wants to shine. Everybody's chasing clouds. Somebody will discredit somebody else's account, pull the other person down. This is no time for that. If you're serious about a change, if you're serious about NSAR's movement that you started, then you must come together unified and strategize. You need to regroup, come together, strategize. What is it? Because there's no good in having a knee-jerk reaction each time somebody is killed. What is the long-term strategy? Because election will come 2023 now. Once they offered this amount of money or that amount of money or bag of rice, which was stored, by the way, in warehouses, and people have found where the bags of rice and the box of noodles and oil and the rest of it, they've discovered it and they've looted it. But they were saving it for election, that they would distribute it to citizens to come and vote for them so that they can win their vote. Until we stop that nonsense, that people actually buy your votes. They are credible. They were credible candidates who came forward, but they will never get voted in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So Tunji, talk us about these social movements who are behind the protests. One of the organizations that's been highlighted is the Feminist Coalition, and the other, who are also involved in this. How are these social movements organized? And there's talk of them becoming even more organized. Talk us to understand, the background of these social movements and what they can practically achieve at this point.
Yeah, first of all, look, I want to salute the courage of the young men and women. I think women played a major part in this protest because they were very organized, and some of them have come to the fore. I'm going to salute them because it's not easy. Tags were being set on them, and they were trying to discredit them, and they were trying to infiltrate them. So I salute them. Lagos, the weather is not, in Nigeria, the weather is about 35 degrees on a normal day. And I salute also the businesses and those who supported them with water, food, and all sorts of things, and those who provided entertainment to keep their day going, and also those who were tweeting from around the world, because Nigerians were about 17 million from around the world, and anything that affects one Nigerian, other Nigerians jump in straight away. So that solidarity is welcome. The challenge, though, for these movements, we've seen them before. The Save Nigeria movement, I believe that was about almost 10 years ago, led by Tunde Bakare. And then we saw the Enough is Enough movement and the Occupy Nigeria. The challenge, particularly with this particular movement, is that the guys who are at the front, they're not politicians. And if you want to have systemic change in Nigeria, you have to go through the political system, because that's where you have power and legitimacy. You can't have power and legitimacy just through activism on its own, even though There are many activists in Nigeria that are highly respected. Some individuals, Deji Akinyoju, there's Wole Soyinka, there's even Sowore. But the problem is Nigeria is a cash and carry system, and we still have prebendalism on a grand scale. So a public official who steals $100 million can easily wipe out the most credible individual who, even if you're puritanical, all they need to do is just buy a few bags of rice and, bring 1,000 naira polling day, and people are hungry. And people, once they collect that money, they have to deliver on their promise. So, but my take, the way I want to phrase this is, I think there's a constituency that is still largely missing in the Nigerian political and economic firmament, and that's the diaspora. And, the Nigerian diaspora, as you saw with the Igalos and the Anthony Joshuas and all these powerful Nigerian sports stars and celebrities and so on around the world, their voices are very strong and they have a large following. But what we haven't been able to do in diaspora is to agree amongst each other what the colors of the Nigerian flag is. If you ask 3 Nigerians now, what's the color of the Nigerian flag, they're going to have a long debate. So we don't agree on anything. I mean, a simple thing like diaspora voting, 70 million Nigerians, we cannot vote. We're disenfranchised, yet we contribute $23 billion to the fiscus, which is even almost as big as our national budget. So I think if we really want to work to change Nigeria, those who are crying inside, and there are many of them across, there's Oduduwa Republic agitation, there's the IPOB in the east of the country, they're fighting for self-determination. We have to come together and push. I mean, a friend of mine just posted 38 minutes ago on Facebook, South African. I asked her, I said, so the question is, what do we do about these painful matters? How do we respond? And Sipiwe Sitole, who's a farmer in South Africa, says, I think Africans in the diaspora needs to put pressure on all Nigeria diplomatic missions abroad so that they can feel the heat and act. They must be made uncomfortable and forced to go back and deal with what their government is doing. It cannot be life as usual for them. And that's what she said.
But you know that in the president's speech, he's telling the international community, technically or basically, to mind their own business. He's not willing to engage with the diplomats around the world. So what are we going to do? Because we are.
He doesn't control. The president of Nigeria is one of 55 presidents in Africa. Nigeria is a signatory to the Geneva Convention, and so many statutes. We're a member of the AU, the International, the African Union, the United Nations. He does not have monopoly of wisdom when it comes to human rights, and people are being killed. There are presidents for African leaders who have been taken away to the ICC. There's Bashir is on his way there. Charles Taylor's been there. Laurent Gbagbo has been there. He can say what he likes. The reality is that the optics show that he's not in charge of the country, and the governance has worsened under his 5-year military abysmal rule. He has no monopoly of wisdom. He's an African leader. He's not the US leader. And even the US leader, you can see the challenge he's facing as a leader. So we're in a world where there's certain basic fundamentals, and the human rights of people is far more important, especially as the world becomes interdependent. And so countries like Zimbabwe and Nigeria and so on, it can no longer be business as usual for people's rights to be violated. People are killed extrajudicially and nobody is brought to book.
Yeah.
The whole idea is that people want
Tunji, I'm gonna stop you there and just turn to Faith, just to help us understand. There's been a petition that has been doing the rounds, and where Nigerians are asking for sanctions to be imposed on the Nigerian government. Is this a solution that is could change the situation? Do you think that this is the right way to go, to impose sanctions on Nigeria?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because while we have multiple dimensions to what's going on, first and foremost, this is a security crisis. Sanctions act in very, very selective ways. First of all, a sanction might be that a country, let's say the United States, bans a particular Nigerian government official from traveling to that country. That's not the answer to what we're talking about, right? They might say a couple of, UK businesses might freeze relations with another Nigerian business, or they might, close down a bank account of a Nigerian in the UK. That's not the answer, right? We're talking about systemic change. Again, we need to be careful about, I'm going to use the word palliatives, which now means something very different in Nigeria. But we need to be careful about the tiny elements of progress that don't address systemic challenges. First of all, we have a crisis of leadership that flows from the top to the bottom. There's a different conception of what society or governance needs to look like by those who are in power and those who are not in power. So there's a proper restructuring of our political system that we need to do. And yes, the sanctions might give us a little bit of relief. It might make someone uncomfortable for a little bit of time. But if you look at the UN mandated sanctions, actually, for any country, Russia has done pretty well, even with all the Western powers putting sanctions against them. We haven't seen evidence of any international sanctions bringing a country to its knees at the level that perhaps is needed to force change. Even Iran, the sanctions against Iran haven't forced the type of systemic change that Iran has needed for a long time. So I'm not convinced it's possible that the sanctions do something. I'm not convinced while understanding how sanctions really work. And many people don't know how sanctions work. We think that once a sanction is called, the country will completely freeze to death. It's not the case. Sanctions are so selective. They pick a handful of individuals and they attack their economic interests. But that's not the way to address Nigeria's leadership challenge.
I slightly disagree with you there, because the comparison that you draw with those countries is that those countries are economically independent. So you're talking about, did you mention Russia, for instance? They have their own money. Iran, both countries, they have their own money, so they're not dependent on. So Nigeria is dependent on UK, for instance. There are UK development funds directly going to Nigeria. That actually funds this unit that we talked about. UK is actually funding SARS, believe it or not, because they gave them money, hefty money, to fight corruption. So until they sanction that, withdraw that money that is actually funding this atrocity. So this is why I said I slightly disagree, because you are funding it. If you can withdraw that money, because this is what we're calling for here in the UK, the diasporas in UK, is that withdraw that money from Nigeria. They depend on this money, and this is the money they have now used to fund these various units that are now attacking its citizens. So until
I agree with you. I agree with you on that point, that while foreign money to a particular department might be frozen, history has shown that sanctions always isolate leaders and they force them to continue to double down on their tactics. Look at Syria. How many sanctions were brought against Syria? Russia stepped forward to back Syria up. So what happens is, yes, you might isolate an individual, you might isolate a country from the international system. Hardly ever have sanctions proven to bring about a change in the way the government operates. Sanctions, again, are so selective. Yes, you might sanction a particular department. So if the UK withdraws its aid from the Nigerian police, trust me, another country is going to show up and fill that vacuum, because they always want something from the Nigerian system. Nigeria is so important in the international system. So the sanctions will bring us a little bit of relief. It might make things a little bit tight. China is going to step in and fill that vacuum straight away with far more money than Nigeria asks for, and the crisis continues.
Well, all right, okay. Can I take it to Tunji? Tunji, just weigh in on the sanctions issue. Perhaps we're not talking about a full embargo. Perhaps we're talking about targeted sanctions towards specific individuals who are associated with human rights violations, specific companies. Is this something that you think could help to bring these authorities to account?
Look, I was on an interview with Faith last week, and my own take is that the citizens of Nigeria, wherever they are, they need to become more vigilant. I think that Nigerians are a group of people. We love our pounded yam. We love our Kardashians. We love our Premiership soccer teams. We have favorite teams that we follow, almost like a religion, and we ignore the realities and dangers that are in front of us. I believe that what would be more effective, sanctions are important, like Siju said, because Nigeria is tied to the apron strings of many of these Western nations. And even though we get support from China, I think even China wouldn't want to be seen to be funding a rogue unit that is killing Nigeria, because Nigerians can also boycott Chinese goods. I mean, if they see that the Chinese are not sensitive.
Exactly.
But what I think would be far more effective in the short term, there's a large amount of Nigerians in diaspora who are propping up this failed government by putting money in their bank accounts. I know a lot of Nigerians who have millions of naira. They're so excited to have money in fixed deposit in Nigeria, just to be able to say that they're part of the promise of a new Nigeria, that they are rich in Nigeria and they're rich somewhere else. If we can reduce the remittances by even 10%, I think that will force even our relatives who are dependent on some of these monies to begin to hold their leaders to account. Because why would it be that a Nigerian doesn't know their own councillor, they don't know their local government chairman, they don't know their House of Assemblyman, they don't know their representative in parliament, they don't know their minister, they don't care. Because naturally, we're just wired up like that. We think these guys are magicians, they will do what they're expected to do. I think that would work. I think if you combine that with sanctions, but also to begin to push for prosecution of those who have given the orders to attack innocent civilians and switch off the light and mow them down. So it's got to be a combination, almost like 3 or 4 things side by side. And you can have committees that will be in charge of those individual or specific actions. And then they need to be monitored also by the international community to get a desired action. It's got to be measurable. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
All right. And Saju, I think if I'm correct, the statistics for Nigeria is that at least 64% of Nigeria are youth. And what do you think? And obviously with what's happened now and the awakening that they seem to have had, a lot of people are saying that Nigeria will never be the same again, as young people have repossessed their own, agency and have understood people power. Do you think that the youth can, generate this energy towards making a change in the political landscape in Nigeria? If they all came out to vote in agreement on who they want to be the next leader of Nigeria in 2023, is that something that could happen?
I think it's possible if they can unify themselves and if they can agree that who can lead them, and whoever they choose to lead them, they have to start developing themselves now, because a whole lot of them don't have political capital as we speak right now to lead the country at the population that Nigeria is as it stands, or the growing population that is expected, and all the institutions, the systems that are in place. Because I don't think any of them have the public administration skills as we speak right now. So they need to start developing themselves in public administration, how to administer this duty if they so wish to take on power. Because once they can, because a lot of them are coming from business, a lot of them are coming from perhaps personal development, that kind of thing. It doesn't cut for this type of leadership that we're talking about. It's a whole different ballgame. So they need to start training and developing themselves in politics. They need to start developing themselves in public administration if they're ready, if they're going to be ready for 2023. And when 2023 happens, they need to mobilize themselves in terms of how they are going to monitor the election. They need to take that power, they need to take that control. And that's if the government will let them, and there's not going to be civil war, and they're not going to be shot at again. So this is where they need also support with the international communities to monitor that. So it's going to be, they have to have this twin, and there has to be a twin or a relationship now between the youth, the youngsters who are ready, developed, and those international communities who are going to support and back them up, that this power can be given to the young people come 2023. Because this is what I say, right now, there's nothing they can do, because at the end of the day, Buhari is a democratic elected official or leader. You can't do anything unless he chooses to step down or he chooses to resign. Or you could force him to resign and say that you have no vote of confidence. You do a no vote confidence. So you have no vote of confidence in him, is what I'm trying to get at. But then it will have to take the leaders in his cabinet, in the House of Senate to do that. And they will not do that because they also benefit from the system. So chances of anything happening now is very slim to actually dismantle the structure as we speak. So what people really should be working towards is 2023. You have the right not to vote him in or any of them. And you have the right to put who you want in power. So they have to start thinking long term. Enough of the knee-jerk reactions. We are so into that, and enough is enough. If you're tired of anything, you should be tired of the knee-jerk reactions and start looking at things on a long-term, start giving things a long-term strategy.
Okay, and Faith, so we've seen the response to the protests has resulted in the disbandment of SARS. Is this a victory? Is this something that people can take away and say the protests were able to achieve the disbandment of SARS? Or again, is it smokes and mirrors?
And the real victory here is the fact that people feel emboldened to carry on the struggle. That is the victory. This, more than anything in recent history, has actually united Nigerians of all ages, of all tribes, of all religions to say, we're not going to give up the struggle. It will be absolutely futile for us to look at a pronouncement from the Inspector General of Police as the victory we're looking for. No, it's not. It's the beginning. We accept it. We want to see more. And I think if we are able to sustain the momentum, we've got a real shot. Yeah. Tunji did mention Enough is Enough, mentioned Occupy Nigeria, Save Nigeria Group, etc. They started out. They all still exist, interestingly, but there's no momentum. There's no energy going behind it. And when we look at the success of all these coalitions that have come through as well, it's also quite challenging to look at how people can keep going. We don't want a smoke screen. We don't want one simple solution. We need multiple things to come together. And we need Nigerians to look not just at 2023, look at the rest of 2020, look at 2021, look at 2022. We need intermediate steps and we need long-term steps as well. So I'm all in. This is going to be a long journey. So yes, the disbandment of SARS is welcome. It's not the answer. It's not everything we're looking for.
So Tunji, can we expect these protests to sustain, as Faith put it, to have the momentum to push through all the reforms that have come to the fore and that Nigerians have been going on the streets to protest for?
Yeah, look, the protests have been very successful so far. But, I think that with the shift, with the shooting on the 20th and the killings of Nigerians at Lekki Tollgate and then the subsequent arson and looting that's been happening, it has made it difficult for even the protesters. There's safety now because the army has to go after the looters and, restore security. So this is not the best time for the protesters to be on the streets. But having said that, I want to share with us one of the successes of young people just before the 2019 elections. So there is really opportunity now for young people. There's this bill that they sponsored and it was passed and signed by the president, not too young to run. So they reduced the age of being able to run for the president. I think before, to run for president, you had to be 40. They reduced that to 35. For Senate, it was 35. They reduced that to 30 and, on a sliding scale downwards. So that's one success that the young people have been able to achieve in the political space. And also, I believe, as the problem with, Nigerian politics is that it's almost become a two-party system, almost like Zimbabwe and Ghana and the US. So if you're not in the PDP and you're not in the APC, you're practically wasting your time because the amount of resources that you need to prosecute any election, the young people simply don't have it. What they can do, at least for somebody like me that have been close to politics for more than 2-3 decades, is that they need to ask themselves, yes, we don't like the PDP or the APC, but if it's the vehicle, so I'll give you an example. Barack Obama, if he had run in any other party, apart from first of all, he won't get the ticket in the Republican Party. But if he had run, say, as an independent like Bloomberg, he would never become president of the United States. So the same thing for these young people. They don't have to like APC or PDP. If they can muscle their way in, and it won't happen in 2023.
But you know, sorry to cut you there, Mr. Adetuji, real quick. The problem is none of these young people want to start from the bottom. Everybody is aiming for the top. You've got to start somewhere and build your way. Again, there is no long-term strategy. Everybody wants to be president. What about local government? What about House of Senate? What about councillorship? Nobody wants to go for any of those positions.
Obama started as a House of Assembly in Chicago. We didn't know about him. We only knew about Obama in 2004, and you had already been a member of parliament in Illinois for over 10 years. So yes, you're right, Shiju, that young people, they need to really do a lot of analysis and also read about politics, the history of politics.
Thank you.
More than 500 years, and get a sense of how people emerge, whether it's in the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Democratic Party. You can't come from nowhere and grab the ticket of a major party in any country. And I hope that if they listen to that, we wish them all the luck. But what I do know is that the demands that they've asked for, they mustn't back down on that. They've got to keep pushing for those demands. And they don't have to be on the streets to get those demands met. They just have to go after these leaders and be a fly in their bonnet.
Yeah, and
or a bee, rather, in their bonnet.
Yeah, and Faith, for you, do you think the results of the protests with the killings and the shootings could possibly deter the youth and, possibly the effect of the killings take on in terms of intimidating people, in terms of repressing the masses from voicing out their disgruntlements?
I think that phase has passed now. I think we are far more united now, at least from everything that it looks. People are beginning to reorganize and re-strategize. We might not take to the streets again tomorrow or the next day, but we are organizing via social media. We're building coalitions. I'm speaking to lots of people who are doing active work. It's not going to go anywhere. We take the L, we take the big loss from last week, with the killings, the loss of lives. It's sad, absolutely disturbing. But I think we've passed the stage now of intimidation. First of all, I absolutely condemn the looting on the streets, because that is not from the protesters. Like CJ mentioned, there are different groups of people who are out there pursuing multiple objectives. The real protesters, the people who are asking for change, they did not lift a finger against an individual. They did not burn a single building. They're people who were the most decent human beings you will find. They were not part of that. So we need to condemn what is wrong, and we need to buckle down on the things that are right and the things that unite us. So I'm hopeful. I'm confident as well as I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of a long journey. And I'm all in. It's going to be a long journey, but we're all in. This is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, and then finally, Siju, if you can perhaps share with us just your parting shots. Adetunji has mentioned the role of diaspora, Nigerians in diaspora. Can you share with us your thoughts in terms of what diaspora can do to support the young men and women on the streets in back home?
We've been magnifying the voice. As soon as this news broke out, we've been magnifying the voice here in the UK. There's not any day or any weekend that there hasn't been a protest at the Nigerian House. That's where the Nigerian High Commission is. So the High Commissioner is hearing loud and clear all the protests right in front of Nigerian House. Not just that, our Parliament. So there have been several petitions online, which has gained a significant momentum. So that's going on, and I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, that there will be an early day motion in Parliament to have a debate on that. Not just that, there's several groups, particularly people in local governments and member of parliaments, that are writing letters, adding pressure. I personally have co-written a letter with my fellow councillor, who is also of Nigerian origin, and written to the Foreign Office. So we have the Minister for Africa, Mr. James Doddridge, and also CC Dominic Raab, who's the Minister for Foreign Office, also written to the British High Commissioner in Abuja, as well as the Nigerian High Commissioner who is here. So they all see it. So we are all pressuring. Various groups are putting pressure. Igbo community, Hausa community, Yoruba community. So there are various groups that are actually putting pressure on the government here in UK to actually respond. And they have responded. So many of them, many of the UK government officials here in the United Kingdom have spoken out loud and clear. So we have Dominic Raab, who's the foreign minister, he's spoken out. We have Lisa Nandi, who's the shadow minister for foreign office. She's spoken out. The shadow minister for Africa spoke passionately when this news broke out last week, and calling the government to respond. So we are having government officials here in UK passionate about this topic. I want to see a difference. So I'm really grateful for that. That they're actually taking our concerns seriously, and they're doing something here. And I also want to thank my community here in Medway, the local government here. The mayor of Medway came out with us on Sunday to protest. So we are seeing actions at different levels of government here in the United Kingdom, and that's really encouraging.
Right. And then for you, Tunji, finally, you mentioned that it's difficult for Nigerians to get together and to agree on the colors of the flag. What do you think needs to be done in order for Nigerians to at least come together and to find each other in this very important time?
Look, I think it's very important for Nigerians to cast aside their differences, ethnicity, religion, because the people who are putting their knees on our necks are people that come from every single tribe and religion. If you look at the Nigerian cabinet, the 43 ministers or so who represent every single state in Nigeria, they cut across religion, they cut across tribe. There's Igbos, there's Yorubas. If you go to the National Assembly, the 360 members of the National Assembly, there are women there, there are young people there, there are former governors, former ministers. So these are the people who are supposed to hold these rogue police officers to account. But as I said to you before, if we spend a lot of our quality time pursuing social endeavors and money, we will not be able to grow the nation to its fullest potential, especially if we're looking for justice and equity and equality and human rights, protection of human rights, disabled people, vulnerable groups. And on our side in South Africa, I must say that the march to the consulate, or rather the High Commission, was very successful. It was well attended. I think that was also in part due to the attack by the army at Lekki toll gate, because if there was no such attack, I don't think a lot of Nigerians will have a reason why they can't go to Pretoria on a sunny morning. But also what on my side that we are doing, because I'm part of a group called the 12 Disciples. And so what we are doing, and with Siju, I've been monitoring what Siju's been doing. And when the story broke, we were all very proactive till about 5 a.m. to ensure that we can put these petitions out there to pursue the ICC path. But also on Wednesday, I have convened a meeting of certain well-meaning Nigerians. We want to look at the victims, because there are victims, and those victims fall into three categories. There's the Lekki toll gate victims, then there are those that were killed in theaters beyond Lekki. In Mushi, for example, the police killed 13 people about a few days before the Lekki massacre. And then also the ones that were killed by SARS between those days that I talked about, 2017 to 2020. So those victims, we are interested in holding our leaders to account to ensure that they compensate the victims, but also we want to build our own coalition around fundraising for those victims so that we can reduce the pain that they're going through at this time. So we have to work together with all the diaspora formations and put pressure on our government to make sure that the demands of these protesters, most of them, if not all of them, are legitimate demands, but of course, some of them can only be dealt with in the short term, medium term, and long term, because it's a long list. There are about 15 demands that they put forward in total.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for making time to come and have this conversation on what's currently taking place in Nigeria, and also just think through the political landscape and what the future of Nigeria could hold. Of course, from the rest of us in Africa, we hope it is a watershed moment for Nigeria, and that Nigeria will start to strip off some of those layers of its old identity and really emerge to become the beacon for the continent that it is, as the most populous, as the richest nation in Africa. We want to see them take that place and become a true example for the continent. So thank you again for the time. And as we like to say our goodbyes here at Afrospace, I will start with my farewell in Zimbabwean language called Shona, and I will say Sarai Shakanaka.
Odabo.
From me, Adetu Jemazaba, I'll say Kachivo.
And I'll say my Segode for houses.
Right.
Diabonga.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yasha.
Yabonga. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
everyone.
Bye. Au
Cheers.
revoir.
Have a good week. All the
Bye-bye.
It began in Africa.
Yeah.
We are controlling transmission.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you say?
Yeah. Yeah.